Hey there. Greetings all.
Okay.
Alan, you're muted.
Folks.
Nuno, I'm not sure if we've met. I think we have. How do you pronounce your name correctly?
It's basically like you said, but without the Spanish accent. So instead of Nuno, will be Nuno.
Nuno.
Yeah.
Morning. It's morning here.
Well, here is late afternoon. I'm in the south of Germany.
Oh, are you excited about the conferences in September?
Oh, I gotta say, there's a lot of conferences going on in these next weeks/months. So I'm still up to decide which ones I will attend. Nonetheless, the Rchain one is on my checklist. Yeah.
Awesome. Kit, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm in the Netherlands, so I'm in the same time zone as Neil.
Yep.
And we have lovely summer weather. So it's well, it's a shame to be sitting inside for a meeting, but life has.
Well, so we've got an agenda, and if we get done early, maybe you guys can all go out and take a little break in the nice weather. If everybody's ready, we could just start. I think, Kit, you've got the first agenda item.
Yeah, the first agenda item is basically a report from the executive committee meeting. And well, if you'll note, it's all here. They haven't yet approved our solution for the bounty. Still have about it, so we're going to have to prove that it actually works. But I think we're on track to do that, especially because we turned on the trust metric from May. So we'll need to demonstrate how it's actually working. And actually, before I continue, can somebody be the scribe, at least while I'm talking? I don't see trench floaters here, huh?
Nuno, do you want to be scribe?
What is the scribe?
You record basically what people are saying.
Oh, no, thanks. But
yeah.
Chidindo, do you want to be scribe?
I'm on mobile now, so I can't really type and do the same thing.
Jim?
All right. Well, I'll finish what I'm saying, and then I'll be the scribe and fill in what I said. So okay. Basically,
I think that HA has the recording turned on, so you can always go on and put captions on the YouTube and work from that.
Right. Okay. So basically,
right, so Kid is officially scribe.
Okay. We need to prove at the next executive committee meeting that our solution is actually working, and that includes having reports and metrics. So people are working on metrics right now and reports. So we need to continue and get them ready. That's my report.
Karen, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Karen, welcome.
Hi.
Will,
hi,
good
Karen.
Morning. How are you?
Hello.
I have a request, by the way. When people speak, it communicates a lot of body language to me if you can turn your video on, at least while you're speaking. That's my request, but it's not, I mean, it's not mandatory, especially if you're on mobile. Kit, just to summarize, spoke about what is going on with the executive committee. I want to, yeah. Does anybody else have more agenda items that they'd like to talk about?
Well, about making this report for the next executive meeting, we need a lot of people to put their hands on. And yeah, so please help us.
I'm actually willing to help, but that is mainly one of my questions within the Rchain community. I have some skills, but I'm not exactly sure where they can apply or what kind of help do you need?
Well, we have basic data, financial data, and that has to be aggregated to useful information. Are you good with spreadsheets?
No, finance is not my cup of tea.
Okay. What's your skills?
Yeah, so mainly I target concept, usability, design, and front-end development for software applications. That's my main target. I provide a wider range of services, but in a cooperation with some experts I'm in contact with.
Okay.
Nuno, maybe you and I and Jim Weiscarver could follow up a little bit on that. Jim did some very, very nice UI work that makes the voting system much more transparent. And we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Others
Yeah, sure.
The user interface more than I did.
Okay. So we can follow up on that, Nuno.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Karen, there's no agenda item for this, but I know that the issue 471 resulted in a survey. Do you want to speak to that a little bit? Are you available to speak to that? Sorry, you're muted, Karen.
Sorry. I think some of you, I know Kit obviously is working with our group, but we're aware that we've gone through this process where we surveyed both developers as well as part of the board and key members about what their values, they consider the primary values for Rchain. And then from those, we distilled a bunch of definitions, and those were put into the survey that you saw in Discord. So right now, those were frozen on Friday, and Barry has put together the top 6 of those values, which currently they're being used by to be shared with the branding firm. And then from this, our next phase is to work into principles to be derived and incorporated or implemented based upon what we came up with. So that's where we're at right now. A lot of our challenge is to, since we, as a co-op, we subscribe to the International Co-op Association's principles and values. And I think a lot of members weren't really aware of what that meant, the significance of it, and some of the conversation in the on the commentary part of the branding poll, of the values poll was there. So our next step is going to be translating all this into the next phase and principles. Can't hear you, Alan.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. When you say that many members weren't aware about the association, could you describe that a little bit more?
I don't know if they weren't aware, and you have to realize that this is just based upon the simple, the few people who made comments, which was that that we had that we were actually, as a co-op, have adopted those principles, that they are our principles now, because of the fact that we are a agreed to be identified as a cooperative.
Thanks. Any more questions for Karen? Comments? And thanks for speaking to this without prior notification, without even, yeah.
Well, I wanted to, I'm afraid I've been out of town and out of the loop. So I really was here to catch up on the activities going around the bounties program and the executive committee and what's happening there. So I didn't mean to jump in with an agenda item.
Good. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is sorry. Is there some, yeah. I wanted to apologize for some of my poor follow-up. We had a very, very interesting meeting on guiding guides, and various people have followed up with their own interpretations of what guiding guides means. The meaning in my, or what I came out of that meeting with, is that our label guides, the system of label guides, is turning somewhat into a bridge between individual contributors or small teams trying to make a contribution, and the cooperative as a whole, which has requirements or some idea about what constitutes providing value to the cooperative. And what we're trying to do is to align, obviously, is to align the contributions that people are able to make with what our membership feels the cooperative and the bounty system should be providing. So that's kind of a bridge role. And I've been actually moving myself toward using the word bridge, because I think that's a little bit more communicative than the term label guides, which comes directly out of the bounty system. It makes sense in the context of the bounty system. But I think a lot of other people in our membership aren't so aware of the details of labels and that sort of stuff. Comments, questions?
Has the guiding system, I mean, I've been following a lot of what's going on with the discussion, but has that been, is it still a moving target, or it looks like to me it's pretty much laid out from what I can see?
I would say, if I can answer that, I would, or does anybody else want to address that question? Okay, I'll address it. I would say that it is very, very much a moving target. So this role of a bridge between teams and our larger membership hasn't really been explored before, and we're just starting out. And let me segue into some other stuff. We're trying to put into place voting systems, and Jim will speak about them. We'll show some stuff in the debrief, the community debrief. we're inviting the membership as a whole to vote. Before that, we're also missing a very, very important piece, which is discussions. So in some sense, before all kinds of votings happen, discussion of the issue is sometimes equally as important as the voting itself. The other thing about people who are a bridge is I think that they should be identified within a task itself because they're the go-to person. If somebody has a question, either a team member or a member of the cooperative, I think that the bridge role identifies somebody that's committed to answering questions, to providing information, and so on. How's that, Karen? Does that answer your question, or you have more?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay, if there's particular areas that you'd like me to address more, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, let me move on to this agenda item that I placed here. It's called Make Haste Slowly. And it's a little bit unclear maybe what I mean by that. I used to have a music teacher who told me that if you want to learn how to play music well, you start just slowly. And it's been my experience that working in small groups, having discussions and not making them too rushed is very important in terms of building relationships and for our cooperative in terms of building a cooperative culture. So I find a lot of times that members are interested in getting results, getting answers, getting policies, getting decisions, that kind of thing. In my view, what we are doing right now is we're starting to build culture based on a lot of input. Every participant in this particular meeting has made a lot of contributions to our culture that we're developing. And I think that process is going to continue for quite a while. Questions? Comments?
Is what you're saying that you feel like there's a certain rush in certain areas that?
I think sometimes people have a little bit of anxiety about getting things done and completed. And as regards to questions like the ones that Karen was speaking about, values, principles, as regards to issues that we're addressing within the bounty system, such as equitability between contributions. So for instance, members from different geographical areas or different demographics or different perspectives have different ways of viewing what rewards should be. I think that stuff like this is where we are developing a common culture around it. We are developing cultural norms, and it's going to be a continuing process that we're engaged in right now. It's moving along fine. This discussion we're having right now is part of it. And it's not gonna, it's a cake that's being baked, and it will take some time to bake it. Does that answer your question, Karen?
Yes, I mean, when it comes to the bounty system in particular, you know, we're kind of bridging the gap. I mean, you know, there are companies have complete, you know, compensation committees and HR, and they have complex formulas for working out payments and equitability and all that stuff.
Indeed.
And so we are kind of, what do you call it? We're bootstrapping this whole thing.
We're a cooperative, and we're trying to develop what norms and values we want to apply to compensation as well as to many other issues.
Yes, but I guess my point is once we have those, and let's say we have values of how and who devises and enforces specific policy items.
I'm not sure that we're at the level of policy yet. I think we're still exploring what are the basics of how to get norms. So I attended a meeting with Jim Weitzcarver and his team yesterday, in which we talked about what I'm calling valuation models. So we used to have something called budget, and that was a number that was intended to be rewarded for the completion of a task. To me, that's a little bit, that doesn't give enough transparency and enough, doesn't explain why there's a budget. So for venture capital companies, when somebody brings a proposal, they have a valuation model, which sometimes they're complicated. They may include innovation, intellectual property. They may include specific skills that team members bring to the table. They may include opportunity costs for people being involved with that project. They can be very complicated. On the other hand, a simple one is the one that we used in building the translation guides report for April, where the number of people that worked on the team, including myself, declared at the beginning that we were beginners and we'd like to work at an hourly rate. The rate that we chose was $15 an hour. That's a suggested rate to be voted on later. It took us an enormous amount of time to produce this report. It took us, I forgot, some 150 hours or 180 hours, I think it was. And that's because we'd never done it before. We weren't experts, and that's also reflected in the hourly rate that we chose. But the reward model that we chose was pretty simple. It was, all of the team members agreed to a particular suggested rate and reported the number of hours that they worked. And this is up for voting by the cooperative membership overall. So that's the kind of thing where I think it's going to take us a little while to develop these norms and these ways of these different valuation models. And but I think in the end, it will benefit all of us to see each other's work and participate and understand, like the work that you did in issue 471, which I also think was excellent work and of tremendous value to the cooperative.
So now, with the framework of the guides that we have right now, I'm just asking this because I'm trying to catch up. Well, are the guides the ones that are supposed to have knowledge enough to advise on the budgets that people propose?
Yes, they're supposed to be familiar with the cooperative to the extent that they have some idea of what's valuable and what's not. In some sense, they might be project champions or like that. And they also advise the team as to what might be considered reasonable, what the membership overall might consider valuable, reasonable, and so on. So that's, in that sense, that's why I like the term bridge. I think the role of a bridge is pretty good. It's a bridge between a team that feels they have something to contribute and our membership that feels there are things to build of value within our cooperative.
My only concern here is that, that in terms of being scalable, you need enough guides with at least enough expertise in area to understand the budgeting of a certain area. For example, people in the marketing area might have people who are, I'm just speaking to the world I understand, which is somebody proposing, a video production for something or other. And unless you know how those things are valued or the costs involved, you might not understand how they came up with their price.
Yes.
I mean, you don't have guides who actually understand the
Absolutely, Karen. That's why, I mean, we've called them label guides in the past, but we need people to fill this bridge role that understand what the market is for certain kinds of production, video production or whatever, that understand what is involved in development, that understand all these areas. We need those kinds of people for sure.
Okay, and so they would be considered guides, or they would be considered something else?
They would be, you know, in my terminology, I'd like to call them the bridge within the team. So they understand the domain area, they understand the cooperative, and they're able.
They're separate from the guide. They're
so
separate.
We've used the term guide for many things. We talk about guides leading meetings. We talk about guides in many contexts.
I meant guides in terms of specifically the bounty system, where people go in and review issues and work.
Yes. So what we've been calling label guides, people with domain knowledge in the label and the experience to guide teams or guide discussions or whatever. We've been calling them label guides.
Okay.
Jim, you have your hand up. I can see that.
Yeah, I think the term bridge doesn't quite work. You know, we have three bridges per label.
No, Jim, I think that the labels that are constituted as they are now are okay temporarily, but I don't think that the membership overall, you know, unless you're specialized in particular areas, I'm not sure that the label system is very communicative. So I don't necessarily think there's an exact one-to-one correspondence. By bridge, maybe champion is a more conventional word. So it's got part, I think Karen described it, people that have knowledge in the domain and are able to articulate that know, yeah. Karen, do you want to address Jim's question at all?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Jim, you want to repeat the question in terms that Karen might understand?
Yeah, it wasn't really a question. I mean, you're talking about something different from the system we have now, where you assign a label to a thing, to a issue. Okay, and we have three guides associated with that who have knowledge in the domain and can contribute and have some basis to help the team set budgets and are in you know, vote on the rewards, the budgets and the rewards that the issues get.
So Karen,
this is a specific role, which I guess is something completely different from what you're calling a bridge or a champion.
Okay, Karen, does Jim's answer make sense to you? Does it answer your question?
Well, I think that's what I thought, essentially, that the guides fulfill that role of judging, having knowledge and judging budgets, right? Right, Jim?
Okay, so we have a discrepancy between this interpretation of bridge and lead guides and so on. I think is there anybody else that wants to speak to that question? Okay, if there's no new information, maybe we should go ahead. Does somebody want to speak to it?
Yeah. Actually, I looked at your bridge name, and it actually reminded me of another term that is used in sociocracy, which is you have different circles of people or participants, and there's a link between them. And at first I thought that's what you were referring to with the bridge role, so that we have our label guides and maybe one of them takes on this extra responsibility to be a bridge, and that could be a bridge to a working group or a bridge to the larger membership. And well, if we want to follow the sociocracy model, then we would call it a link, not a bridge or champion or something. But it's naming. Naming is hard, right?
Yeah, I want to say something also. If we just keep the terms of the trust metric, like a junior and a master and apprentice.
So HJ, let me reformulate what you said and see if it makes sense and it's what you actually mean. Dan Connolly, in coming up with the trust metric, modeled it kind of after a guild system in medieval Europe. So in the guild system, there were the external world, which Dan's calling observers, and there are apprentices that are becoming, just starting to learn about programming or production or the culture of our cooperative in this particular case. And then there are journeymen who, or journey persons, I guess is a better term, who have some experience, and there are masters. And the implementation that we have now is for voting on rewards. And these are the titles or the categories that are used. And again, I would say that this terminology and this system, just as everything else in our cooperative, is indeed a moving target. It's something that we're building as we go along, and we're making haste slowly. And I think what HJ was saying is that within this function of link or bridge or champion or label guide, whatever you want to call it, there is a requirement to align capacity of teams to contribute with the membership overall and what the membership feels is important to the cooperative to develop. And I think what HJ is saying is that that's a role that requires some experience, and people are going to move from observers to beginners to intermediates to masters. HJ, is that?
Yeah, that's more or less it. Yeah. Let me share my screen and then see what the trust metric is telling about.
I think the difference between the levels that apply across the whole co-op and the guide that has knowledge in a specific area is a little bit disjoint in that a master may know nothing about video production. They may know about everything else, but not about video production.
So Jim, are you suggesting that the certification level or the acknowledgement level for a bridge is distinct from what label guides are doing right now?
Well, the label guides vote according to their trust rating, so that the master would have 7 times the vote of a novice or whatever. That system, the systems are connected in that way.
So Jim, if I were to ask you about a rating system for the bridge role, would you say that there might be people that are more experienced in being a bridge and less experienced, and that could be something that might be orthogonal to the way that the voting is done? So I think what Jim is speaking about is the system of voting for rewards after the discussion.
Well, advising in general. I mean, an expert in programming might not be the best person to advise on something else. But I guess I'm looking at the. I'm not sure. I don't think that this notion of a bridge is well defined at this point in terms of the bounty system. And I think we have.
I agree with you on that. It's not well defined.
A major task in terms of recruiting and vetting and developing trust with and assigning the guides to the existing labels. There are certain principles that we have in terms of trying to connect the guides with working groups that are related and people that are that have knowledge.
So Jim, how about this? Let me propose that the guides be what they are today, and that we consider each team might or should have a bridge role embedded in it, where the function of the bridge role is to communicate between our membership overall and the membership in the team.
Yeah, that's basically it. And, it goes back to what Kit was saying about the link role, that they link to appropriate work group or committee that they report to, and essentially look at the performance of that guide group and provide feedback to the guides on their activities, whatever.
Okay. Anybody want to comment? Sorry, Karen, go ahead.
This still doesn't go back to the issue of guides having the right expertise to judge budgets in specific areas, unless they are taking on the responsibility of researching that information and finding out.
Karen, let me say that budgets or rewards are voted on by the membership. They're currently voted on by in the system that the bounty system constructed, that we constructed. Dan Connolly is very knowledgeable about the current system. We're trying to make that system more transparent and invite voting by a larger number of members. In the past, voting was fairly restricted. Typically, issues had only 3 or 5 or 10 members voting on it, but there's no reason why all of our membership shouldn't vote on rewards for a particular issue. The bridge role that I'm talking about, or link role, or whatever we should call it, is about the pre-discussion previous to a vote. So prior to a vote, in my opinion, we need people that can put together valuation models so that people who are voting, our members who are voting, have some idea of what the skills or requests are, and skills and also knowledge of the domain. So they might know what production costs, how to value it, how how you can tell the difference between a high quality production and a lower quality production that people who are not domain experts may not even know.
So that's the role of the bridge person, not the guide?
Yes. So the bridge person, yes. So I'm going to just call it bridge person and make it a distinct role and suggest that every team working on an issue, working on a project, should have a bridge person embedded that can serve this bridging role.
So let me ask you a question about how you want to involve the whole community in voting. I mean,
so okay, so
they all have to be a member of
yes.
GitHub.
Only members can vote. I'm not sure whether it's required that they be members in GitHub or not. We can discuss that. But Jim put together a interface for our current voting system, which is a little bit more transparent. It's my belief that we're missing a very, very, very crucial component, which probably needs to be in place before we should really start speaking about voting. And that component is discussion before voting. Vlad Zamfir gave a talk recently, which I find very, very important for our cooperative. It was an interview at Consensus. And what he pointed out is that in a lot of uses of governance, it's actually the discussion where a lot of the consensus comes about what should be done. And voting, in many instances, is more a legitimization or a recording of what the consensus was. So in my opinion, the big tool that we're missing, and I'm working on it, I'm trying to find some good candidates, but the big tool that we're missing is a discussion mechanism where all of the membership can discuss an issue like what rewards a particular group that did a particular thing should be voted. And that would be facilitated by the bridge person, maybe formulating what was done and why it's valuable.
I see this as very important that we have this, this dialogue and discussion, and clearly that's true. That generally voting, just bringing things to a vote, is a way to make bad decisions. At the same time, I see us, incubating a system here that we're having to make decisions about who should be guides, who can we get to be guides. We have all these holes in the guides to fill, and I don't think complicating it with an additional role at this point makes much sense, except that this whole thing about valuation is important, and we probably should have a document on valuation that guides can review, and that could be a requirement, that guides review the evaluation document. And
okay,
and maybe if you look at a lot of the current labels, there is a lead guide pointed out.
Okay, Jim, let me say something contentious here. The guides and lead guides that you're pointing to are all self-nominated volunteers, and that's fine. We do not have a document about what the requirements are and so forth and so on. we are building a system for discussions among ourselves for working within the bounty system in a fair and equitable way, and we're bootstrapping it. So we do have something that we put together for now, and it is subject to further development. We're right now discussing what the directions for future development may be, and it's not likely that we're going to solve this problem or have a final result in this meeting, but we are exposing directions that we think would be profitable for our membership to think about.
Yeah, I think we can, we can consider it, if there's a difference between a lead guide and a bridge, how we select them is certainly an issue that we need to deal with. We have a lot of important issues to deal with.
Well, I think how we select them is simple. The team selects them, and if the bridge does a good job, the team is going to have good representation. Their goals are going to be explained well. They'll be well aligned with the cooperative. And if the team selects a poor bridge, then they are likely to get slashed or not receive the full respect that they deserve for their work.
I would say that,
carefully and
Jim, let somebody else speak, okay?
And well, on the recently new perspective, considering that I'm observing for, let's say, maybe a couple of weeks, I do think you guys have an interesting system going on. And like you said, Alan, is far away from being perfect, but on the other hand, is also what for what I'm here. I do like the co-op, the way a co-op can work, and I do realize that it's not easy to set up in this particular case a bounty system like this, and I also do acknowledge that you guys are likely on a good way, and it's a long way, but I think you guys are on a good way. That said, the reward system eventually, I mean, a reputation system. I didn't really understood how those bridges or the other element could make the connection between the people that are more experienced and are less experienced, but I think some kind of reputation system could play a role there. And it's too soon for me to speak. I only mainly wanted to give a word on the good effort that I can see, and if I have some better ideas in the future, I will continue to talk.
Thank you, Nuno. And I think user interface, user experience is going to be an important part of this. We're 10 minutes away from the community debrief, so I'd like to guide this meeting toward closing. Does anybody have something important that is left unsaid and could be said in a minute or so?
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me? I want to talk about something about what I have done last week. Last week, Rchain from the Reflective Venture reached to me, and he wants to bring the Rchain to the Chinese university or something. So I'm trying to find somebody who can make some promotion on Chinese university, and so I find a person who has many university resources, and he knows a lot of people in the university, like University of Science and Technology of China, and Peking University, and so on. Some of the university in China, and I have a good friend who and he has a good friend who is the director of the Information Security Department in the University of Science and Technology of China. And I'm trying to reach more resources from in the Chinese university, and maybe I'm going to start up a study group in the Chinese university. And I also have a friend in the university who can post a link in their university BBS. I don't know if you guys know that, and try to make more Chinese students to know about Rchain.
Okay, Will, you've gone over a minute. I'm just want to know what is the question that you're trying to ask. You're acting in the role of a bridge. You're describing what resources you have and why they are valuable to our cooperative. Is that what you're saying, or what are you trying to ask?
I'm not asking any questions. I'm just giving what I have done to the community. I'm just saying that. Okay.
So Will, let me characterize what you just did as the exact role that a bridge should be doing. You're telling us why this is valuable to our cooperative, and you're describing what kinds of resources indirectly you might need in order to bring this team together, or in order for this team to function properly. Do you agree to that statement, Will?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody else want to speak for a minute? Or, somebody from this meeting should follow up with Will and offer to help Will be this bridge. A lot of us have experience with marketing or with organizations or with whatever. Reach out to Will and help him.
Yes.
Okay. If there
I'm done here. Okay. No.
If there are no further things to add to this meeting, I'm going to close it a little bit early. I'd like to close this meeting early because we have the community debrief afterwards.
Alan?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I think in addition to what Will said, there's something very similar going on in Africa. Okay, I don't really remember the issue name now, but we're working on something quite similar, which is onboarding tertiary institutions or universities, quite similar. And also, Will, I think we could work together because we have schools over here that are in partnership with Chinese universities also. So if we could reach out to some of the affiliates, I think it's possible for us to actually promote Rchain to the university community, both here in Africa and also in China.
Yes, we can talk about that on the Discord. You can find me name Will.
You said? I didn't hear that.
So Will's Discord is WILL.
Okay. Kid Blake, I think the issue number is 681. Yeah, so you could add that today.
Okay.
May I adjourn may I, without objection, adjourn this meeting and return the time to the community, or however you say it? Without objection, thank you guys all for participating, and we'll see you later.
All right.